The LSU men's basketball team on Saturday night, 20-point victory over Mizzou, 75-55. You know, after the game, Mario, a lot of people said, man, I looked like LSU from earlier this season. That kind of looked like the old LSU. That looked familiar. Will Wade, after the game, talked about it himself, saying they got back to their identity a little bit on Saturday night.
The last month or so, we hadn't really had an identity. At the beginning of the year, we had a pretty clearly defined identity. We played really hard on defense. Our pressure was really good. We used our defense to turn into offense. And the past month, you know, since X has been down, we've kind of been working things back. We really haven't had an identity. We've just kind of been waffling in the wind. So we spent a lot of time in the last couple of days talking about getting back to having an identity, getting back to being who we were. And if we do that, we're really good. I showed a highlight tape before the game of, you know, us earlier in the year, how we were in a stance and turning our defense into offense. And I think our guys understood what I was talking about, and we certainly played. I'm glad you noticed it, but I thought we played a little bit more like we did earlier in the year. We played a little bit better complementary basketball. Our offense helped our defense out, and I thought just overall we played a little bit more solid.
And as a result of getting back to the identity that they had a little bit earlier in the year, you saw it play out from a betting standpoint, the same way it played out for like the first 15 games of the season. LSU covered the spread. LSU hit the under on Saturday night. Look, man, I stayed away from LSU this weekend. I wasn't going there. I can remember though looking at it, and about 8:30 or so on Saturday morning, the minus 14 for LSU was even money. So if you threw cash on it, you made money on LSU. And then, look, they'd been such an over team, but we talked about how much of that was because of these lackluster second halves and giving up 40 points to the opposition in the second half. They hit the under. So back to the identity. Defense created an offense. They forced a lot of turnovers. LSU covering and hitting unders once again, apparently.
Yeah, much needed to win. And first of all, non-conference or pre-conference this season was such a good time. They just kept covering. The over just kept hitting. That was easy money. But as far as this game goes and going into tomorrow, I think LSU can win. I think LSU can beat Arkansas. And this is a team that, like you said, or like Will Wade said, I should say, is getting back to its identity. And when it comes to LSU, I don't think they're missing very much, like personnel-wise. You can argue that they don't have enough shooting. You can argue that they don't have the center position fixed or figured out. But it just comes down to second half execution. And we've seen it from this team at times, like we did early in the season. And we have not seen it in some of these bad losses down the stretch here, because they've lost to some bad teams, but they've also blown out some bad teams. And they found the formula in this game. They opened the half on a 22-8 run against Missouri. They go on to shoot 52% for the second half. This team shooting 50% or better an entire half is really good, I think, regardless of what SEC opponent that you're playing. And for the game, they outshot Missouri 51% to 36%. So you're forcing them to a low percentage. You're getting effective looks. You're not turning the ball over very much. That's the formula for LSU to win. And they've made mistakes. They've been very palpable. They've been very apparent. But I do think they are fixable mistakes. And they really have to fix them if they have a chance to beat Arkansas this week.
So you mentioned the second half there is, the tear they went on, 22-8 run to start. They forced Missouri to call a timeout with 1 minute and 55 seconds just into the second half. So not even a full 2 minutes into the second half, LSU came out and just on that big of a run. Will Wade talked about that second half after the game.
You know, we spent a lot of time on that, talking about that, working on that in practice. And I was happy to see some carryover. I thought we should have been up a little bit more at halftime, but I thought the first 5 to 7 minutes of the second half really set the tone. Make them call the first time out. We scored a couple easy baskets. And I thought we made some good things happen there at the beginning of the second half, and that set the tone.
Not only did they force Missouri to call that first timeout, out of the timeout, Missouri turned the ball over, and Darius Days hits a three, and that got the lead to 15. And LSU, they were off and running. Set the tone set off of that.
Yeah, Tari Eason not excellent in this game. He fouled out again. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it was a good team effort from LSU, and they're going to need well-rounded performances like this, like they were getting early in the season. Like Gaines was scoring double digits a lot more consistently. Murray's been pretty consistent, but in this game he had 11 points. As you mentioned, Darius Days had 10 points, 2 for 2 from the three-point line. You'd love to see that. And then Xavier Pinson scores 10 points, double digits, a little off of what he had been producing for LSU. He's been scoring the ball really well, but if you get 3-4 guys in double digits to then supplement what you have with Tari Eason, that's how LSU is going to win these games. And I hope those guys continue to stay aggressive.
I thought Tari Eason played okay. I I get it. Fouling out isn't great, but he gave you 20 minutes, which is not normally what he gives you, but it's not far off from what he gives you. And he still scored better than his average. I mean, his average is 16 points. He gave you 18. So it's not like it was against Kentucky where he fouled out after 7 minutes and gave you nothing.
No, but against an inferior opponent at home against Missouri, it's reasonable to expect him to flex his muscles a little bit, especially in a spot like this where LSU needs to win.
That's fine, but I mean, from a bigger picture standpoint, of course, look, you want to pad stats in games like this, but from a bigger picture standpoint, you didn't have to replace the 16 points that he normally gives you like you did against Kentucky. Even against an inferior opponent like Missouri, if you would have had to replace the 16 points that Tari Eason gives you, you're up a creek a little bit without a paddle. You didn't have to do that this time, so he still was productive enough. Would you like to see him stay in the game? Absolutely. You don't want to see him foul out 2 times in a row. That's not conducive to success for LSU long term, but at least in this case, you didn't have to replace his production. You still got his production in conjunction with him fouling out.
Yeah, no, the production is not a problem, as you're saying, but this isn't just in a vacuum. Like, this has been something for Tari Eason all season, is foul trouble, and not just the fouls piling up, but kind of his body language and some of these fouls where they take place, like fouling guys 50 feet away from the basket when your team is in the double bonus, when you have 3 or 4 fouls already. Like, these are situations that you have to avoid, and the fact that he's still not avoiding it, fouling out 2 games in a row, maybe it didn't impact the team that much this time, but that's a negative trend that I hope does not continue for LSU. And Tari Eason is clearly their best player. They're going to need the team to perform and be a well-rounded effort, like we're saying, but at the end of the day, that's still your best player. When you need a bucket, that's where you want to go. So you really want to see him round into form and play his best basketball this time of year with Tari Eason.
That's fair. LSU, look, victory, good victory. One you had to have, protected home floor. Now you go to Bud Walton Arena this week, and good luck. That's going to be a tough task for LSU to go into Bud Walton and get that victory on senior night. And it's going to be, I mean, there's probably going to be guys hanging from the rafters up there in Fayetteville. LSU baseball, before we hit the break here, they pulled off the weekend sweep, 4 games, beat Towson 6-0 on Friday, Southern 9-2 on Saturday, then swept the doubleheader yesterday, 11-1 the first game over Towson, 15-0 over Southern in the nightcap, a game that was shortened to 7 innings. I thought LSU pitched the ball really well this weekend. Obviously, you give up 3 runs in 4 games. That's going to get the job done most of the time, especially with an offense like LSU has. A 1-hitter against Towson on Sunday in that first game of the doubleheader was great. They ended up with 12 walks in the 4 games, which I guess if you look at that from a just a pure number standpoint, you're going to be like, that's not great. But they were spread out, and it didn't really impact the team. Kind of the same with errors. LSU had 5 errors in 4 games. They didn't commit one against Southern in the final game, and they were a little bit more spread out. They didn't hurt LSU nearly as bad, but you do want to see them get that cleaned up. They haven't been as smooth on some of the turns on the double plays yet either, man. So still stuff to work on there, I think, defensively for them. But great there. Javen Coleman, you obviously want to see what's going to happen with him being pulled in the middle of an at-bat is never great. Jay Johnson has not had an official diagnosis or an official status update on him. You might not have Coleman available this weekend, but you could have him going forward still. And the role they've used him in coming in after Hilliard, he's been very good in that role. And that seems to be how they kind of want to structure that day anyway, is, let Hilliard get you off to a good start, use him there. He's better as a starter, and then piece it together after that. Coach Jay's talked a lot about using 4 or 5 guys. Saturday so far this season has been the day you've seen that. Offensively, look, Dylan Cruz had a great weekend, hit his first 2 homers. Joe Bear had a great weekend, hit another homer. Yeah, right, exactly. Trey Morgan went 4 for 5 on Saturday. You could go through all those guys. What Alex Milazzo gave LSU offensively this weekend, if he replicates that, he's your catcher. It's over. Done. Game, set, match. He's your starter, and you just continue to do it with what you've done here. If you need a big at-bat here or there, you need to give him a day off, you can go with Tyler McManus or whatnot. Yes, Alex Milazzo's hitting 286, and that's phenomenal. And I know some people will point to competition. I will point to the fact that Alex Milazzo was not getting hits against this competition the first 2 years of his LSU career. He is now. He hit 428 this weekend, 3 for 7. But again, even more than that, it's just the productivity in other ways. Alex Milazzo struck out 1 time this weekend. He's putting the ball in play. The swing and miss was always the big issue with him. He's putting the ball in play. He's using the whole field. The sacrifice bunts have been key for Milazzo. 4 sacrifice hits from him so far this season. in 7 games that he's played, 6 starts. That will get the job done. Alex Milazzo is not going to go out there and hit 330. You also don't need him to. You just need the production, and it doesn't always have to come in the form of a hit, and that's what he's getting. That's what Coach Jay has gotten out of him. Then you have Jack Merrifield at the bottom of the order, who's still hitting over 400, had 2 doubles on Saturday. That's the story offensively for me this weekend. Yes, the other guys were phenomenal, but you expected those other guys to be phenomenal. The question was, could they hit 1 through 9? Could they produce 1 through 9? They have done that, and you point a lot to Alex Milazzo, to Jack Merrifield at the bottom of that order, having competitive at-bats, not expanding the zone, not striking out, and putting the baseball in play, forcing the defense to make a play. When you do that, good things tend to happen. Doesn't always have to be a base hit to score a run. Doesn't always have to be a base hit to advance the runner. Sacrifice bunt late in that game against Townsend to move runners to first and the second and third round. Both of them came around and scored. That's perfect. I mean, that is winning baseball, is what that is.
That analogy is used so much that it's kind of weird to hear it used in actual baseball terms. Like, you don't need a home run every time, just try to hit singles. But I think the angle with Milazzo there is very significant. And like you said, they don't need him to be great, but if he continues to do anything close to that clip when they face better competition, that's going to be really, really good for LSU. And I think there's something to be said for a man that's coming over. He's a really good offensive player. And for somebody who has not been Milazzo the first couple of years, maybe that's a little bit of extra juice. And that's showing up so far for the LSU baseball team. But as far as this weekend goes, I think the results pretty predictable. They did a much better job defensively. You could see just from the numbers there after the game against Louisiana Tech, where it was kind of a screwy environment with the field and Rustin, but it was nice to see them bounce back defensively, albeit against weaker competition. That being said, big weekend coming up. I know you're excited.
Huge weekend coming up. You'll finally get to learn a little bit about them this weekend, specifically on the mound. I think LSU is going to hit the ball this weekend. I do feel fine, but when it comes to that, get 2. I mean, look, that's your goal. We'll have plenty to talk about from a betting standpoint this week, because I'm sure you'll be able to bet on all of these games at the Shriners. It's a marquee event on the early college baseball calendar just nationally. So you should see some action this weekend from a betting standpoint if you want to get involved with that. And we'll have plenty, like I said, plenty of that on that. But get 2 if you're LSU from a winning standpoint. It's going to be tough to beat Texas, okay, for being honest. And look, if you do, that's a feather in your cap going forward. If you don't, it's not going to hurt you. I mean, losing to Texas in early March is not right. It's kind of a win, feather in the cap. Not okay. Well, it's not going to hurt you either. So, would you like to win it? Of course, because it'd be awesome, and it's going to be a great environment in Minute Maid Park for that game. But it's going to be an uphill climb. That's a really good team. It's a veteran team. It's a deep team that David Pierce has. So, you should beat Oklahoma. You should beat Baylor. Go ahead and take care of your business at that. Want to see if they can continue to pound the strike zone on the mound, and if they do, I think LSU will get 2 out of the 3 this weekend in the Shriners.
Man, it'd be great if they can compete with Texas, somehow find a way to get a W there. Like, I have some really fond LSU-Texas memories. I remember when they did beat them in baseball. I think the last time they played, and it was after LSU had beaten Texas in basketball and football as well, and you were like, have you had enough, Texas? That was your pinned tweet for a while. I thought that
still is.
It still is. Wow, okay. Might have to do some alterations there if LSU can't take care of business.
Might have to. That was in the Shriners. That was the last time LSU was in the Shriners for that game.
And was that Bryce Jordan that flicked off the Texas pitcher on his way to first base a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that was in the home series. They played against them in Baton Rouge that year.
That was great.
Well, it was phenomenal. That was great. But yeah, the last time they played was a 4-3 game. Daniel Cabrera hit a home run late in that game to put LSU up in the Shriners, and they held on to beat Texas that night. Now the rest of the weekend did not go particularly great for LSU in 2020 in Houston, but see if they can right that ship this weekend, man. Get it back on track. LSU historically has not actually played great in this event. They've lost 2 out of 3 on a weekend like this more often than not. I think this will be the 5th time they've only won the weekend once. And that was the first time they were there in 2015. So
man, so much we hear about the alumni base in Houston. Got to make a little bit better impact. Come on.
Well, I mean, hey, look, the people show out. That ain't the problem. That's why LSU keeps getting invited back to this thing every other year. The people show out, Mario. That the problem might be a little bit of the play on the field of a few of the past weeks.
Then let's fix that.
I think they will this weekend.